Good morning, Transplant Helper community. My name is Jim Merle, and I want to pause today to answer a few questions, most of which are related, but they all have to do with making that hard decision on when to be transplanted or what to allow your doctors to do as far as having to be listed for transplant. Now, this really has a huge effect on many of us, especially as more and more of us are actually becoming younger transplant recipients. Therefore, it's more likely that we might say, for example, have small children in our house, that sort of thing. Really where there's a real emotional tear that comes in between being at home with your children or maybe being in the hospital waiting, and waiting for months and months. At least that's a possibility. And really why I'm bringing all this up, I'm really trying to answer a few questions sent to me by a good friend of the program. His name is Ed, and I won't go through all of his questions, but they basically surround Jim. Right now, I'm feeling pretty good. I'm still working. I'm still having a little bit of quality of life, but the doctors believe it's time to go ahead and admit me to the hospital, add some IV drugs, and really start working me up the list. And he really doesn't want to do that because he has small children at home. And by that, I think it was maybe age 6 and 3, something like that. And Ed, if I'm wrong, I apologize. But anyway, instead of just making this video for you, Ed, I wanted to go ahead and make it in such a way as to answer your questions, I hope, but to go ahead and make a general overview of many people, believe it or not, who are actually in your situation. I know that's true because you, my friend, are exactly where I was back 6, 7, 8, 12 years ago even. Let me just start out by telling a little bit about my story. I'll add some details I've never told before. I try to leave out a lot I have. But basically, my journey started back in 1975 when I was born as a congenital heart patient. Now, at that time, I had something known as transposition of great arteries or great vessels. It was life-threatening. As a matter of fact, had it not been for a surgery I had at 6 months old, I would not have survived that. But from 6 months old, post-surgery, up until the time I was 32 years old, I did pretty well. So apparently the repair they did at least worked. I did pretty well. I had a fairly normal life, functioned fairly normally. But at 32 years old, already married, already had 2 children, I started having problems. And it all began with basic rhythm problems, racing of the heart, PVCs, which is where your heart beats really strong, then boom, skips a few beats and tries to pick back up. That was scary in the beginning. But, I started dealing with that. Ultimately started dealing with VTAC or ventricular tachycardia, which is what they call the rhythm of death. At that point in time, they put in an ICD implanted in me, and that was kind of my safety net, and they monitored me during that period of time, and I'll wrap all this up in a minute. But during that period of time, I actually had 2 minor strokes or TIAs, which did affect me for a while. I lost the use, really of my brain, more or less. Brain fog was unbelievable then. Some numbness, certain things, but it all, all that came out in the wash eventually. But the point is, I went through this journey for a long, long time, okay? Really, up into 38 years, I was a part of this journey. The last 6 years of that journey, things really got difficult. Now, during the last 6 years, again, this is from 32 to 38 in my life, years old. From 32 to 38, I actually was evaluated for transplant 4 times. And so I know, Ed, you're going through the evaluation process now as far as trying to decide where to list you, how high to list you, and how to go about doing that. I went through the evaluation process 4 times. Now, someone immediately says, why 4 times? Well, the answer to that in short is the first 3 times I came up borderline. I came up where the doctor said, okay, we believe it is time to list, but we think we could wait a few months. And as a matter of fact, they usually postpone that about in 6 months increments. Generally, there was a year in there even at one point, but for three of my first evaluations, I was borderline. They more or less said, I think we can wait. They asked me my opinion. I said, yes, we're going to wait. And the reason I wanted to wait was because I was hoping for a couple of things. Number one, I was hoping for more time with my family, okay? I did not want to be hospitalized. I didn't want to be waiting for transplant in the hospital. I didn't want to be that sick, and I still felt okay. So, I personally thought I had time to buy. But number two, I was hoping for medical advancement. I was hoping that before I was ever transplanted, something would be come up with that could help me either to prevent transplanting or to make transplantation easier. Things like medications that were coming out, even things simple as medications being made generic. And there's an example of that. One of the drugs I was going to be put on, and I was put on post-transplant, Cost my insurance company like $4,800. My part out of pocket was $1,300 initially. The first 3, 4, 6 months, $1,300 out of pocket for that one medication among many that I had. However, that drug went generic. And when it went generic, I went from paying out of pocket $1,300 a month to paying out of pocket $3 a month. Okay. So you can see there, time waiting, medical advances, even something like something going generic helped me out. But nonetheless, evaluated 3 times, borderline all 3 times. I agree with my team. They agree with me. Let's wait. Now, again, I've got an ICD-10, so I've got a little bit of a safety net, little protection. I'm taking tons of medication anyway. That's just the way things were rolling in my life. But as time rolled on, over this 6-year period, I did get weaker. It got more difficult for me to have any stamina, any energy to walk, especially up inclines was a difficult thing to do. I really got very symptomatic as far as needing to sleep 14, 16, 18 hours a day. I needed to sleep that much. I got to where I couldn't take a shower without needing a nap. I got to where I couldn't eat a meal without needing a nap. Pretty much anything wore me, as we say in the South, slap out. And I was just needing some help. So things were getting harder. I was no longer able to play with my children. That definitely hurt. I was no longer able to work. So progressively, things digressed, okay? And I got worse and worse. Now, it comes up time for the 4th evaluation. The doctors then set me down. They take me through the 4th evaluation, noticed that my numbers were lower, my cardiac index was lower, my cardiac output was lower. Everything was really worse, okay? I flunked completely a pulmonary test that was set to decide how much oxygen was being moved through my heart and converted and used for energy. That's why I was so lack of energy and I was having so many muscle pains and cramps. Didn't have the oxygen going in my blood to my muscles to really help me to make it. Things were harder. So 4th evaluation comes up. The doctors are really still concerned about whether or not I should be listed. They had a couple of arguments. I'm talking loud, yelling arguments over whether or not I should be listed. One doctor said, yes, you got to list him now. Another one said, no, we got 6 more months. They went back and forth. Finally, when it was all said and done, they came in the room. They presented me with a case. This was the 4th evaluation. They said, Jim, we've got to list you right now. We're going to list you as a status 1B, which that was under the old system. Under the new system, a status 1B is kind of like being a status 3-4, okay, if you want to compare that. But they listed me as a status 1B, which meant I was going to be on IV medication 24/7. It was Milrinone. On IV medication for 24/7, home health, but I was able to stay at home, okay? That, for me, was the easiest part of transplant wait time. Staying at home, being with my family, but yet being fairly high on the list. The 2nd tier from the top on the old system, 2nd tier from the top of the list, and there was actually a really good chance I could be transplanted, straight called from home. I lived that way for 10 months, okay? So I was on IV medication for 10 months, lived that way, lived pretty good. And then finally went into clinic on May the 2nd, 2013. They basically sat me down that day after doing a few tests, some blood work, x-rays, EKG. Echocardiogram was a big one they looked at. And they said, Jim, you're done. You backed yourself in a corner. There's no way out but transplant. We're putting you in the hospital right now. I disagreed with that. I told him, look, we've been through this evaluation 4 times. I'm listed 1B right now. I don't want to be in the hospital. I don't want to be away from my family. So no. Their counter to that was, if you want to leave the hospital today, you can do that, but we're taking you off the list, okay? I'm a 1B. I'm 2nd tier from the top at that time, 2012, 13-ish. I'm 1B, 2nd to the top of the list, and I'm about to throw that away. So they gave me a deal or no deal. I had to take the deal. I had to go in the hospital. Did I feel the worst I've ever felt? No, I didn't, actually. I got worse. Did I feel like I had no other options? No, not for me personally, but with what they were offering, yes, I had no other options. If I wanted to be here with my children, with my family, I was going to have to go in the hospital. Now, here's the thing, and this is really where I want to speak to you, Ed. It was a very, very difficult decision. To any of you who are in this spot, it was a very difficult decision. My children, by that point, were 12 and 8, okay? 12 years old and 8 years old. My 8-year-old had watched me really digress. He had watched me really fall over the past 4-6 years. He had watched me really, really struggle. I'd never been able to run and jump and play with him like I did my older child, my daughter. It was very hard. I did not want to leave them. And at those ages, 12 and 8, let me tell you, my son understood, but kind of didn't understand. My 12-year-old, she knew everything that was going on. She had tons of emotional problems. We ended up having to take her to counseling, I think 2 or 3 days a week. We actually went to a psychiatrist over in Birmingham, counseling at school. She rarely went to school. Reason being, if she went to school, she ended up crying all day, worried about me, wanted to be with me. Now, my wife did a great job once I was admitted to the hospital of trying to get the children over there to see me at least a couple days a week. Nearly killed herself. We're 1 hour and 15 minutes from transplant center, so nearly killed herself, having to either herself come during the day while they're at school or waiting till they get out of school, go all the way over there to Birmingham, spend as many hours as they could, come back home, start the whole day over again, trying to keep the family, trying to manage everything. Very, very hard time, but we made it, okay? We made it. Now, here's what I'm talking about here, Ed. I know you and others that may be watching this, you feel pretty good right now. You're still able, I think you said, to work. You're still able to function. And you definitely don't want to be away from your children. Now, you may have a different opinion of this, but I would do several things. One, I would sit down with my team. I would look them in the eye and say, is this the time? You're not on an IV medication yet, so you really haven't gone as far as you can go outside of the hospital yet. I might suggest trying some Milrinone and seeing if I can't get out of the hospital and wait a little while, if you can. That's just a suggestion. But I would make my team absolutely have a discussion. Now, I know your team, like so many, they gave you the line, if you were in my family, I would put you in the hospital. Or if I were you, I would be in the hospital. I get that, and we emotionally connect with that. I understand why they talk that way. I understand why we're motivated by that. But I would even more than that, just say, explain why now is the time. You got to know this is the time. Now, they're not God, okay? They're not making that decision with a perfect conclusion. Neither would you. But ask them if they really believe this is the time, and if so, why? What factors, what numbers are they seeing that lets them know this is what has to happen? And then ask them if they really think that this is the last result. And if they do, get in the hospital, man. Let them admit you. Let them start those drips. Let them start doing some of the things that move you up the list. I've had several videos here, one of which has actually been called something to the effect of, when do I know the time is right? Good video for Ed or anybody else to watch in relation to the one we're using today. Go back and watch that. At the end of this, I'll link it up in the, there'll be some little video pop-up cards. You'll see them anyway. Go and watch that at the end of this video. Another video I'll put there toward the end is a video basically entitled, I think it's entitled something like The Secrets of the Transplant List. And you'll understand why they're putting you in the hospital. It may not be because you're the sickest patient on the block right now. It just may be that they're trying to present you as that. And especially in this new system, this new criteria where status 1A, status 1B, status 2, status 7, where what we had, you got status 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and they're very detailed. Criteria for the top is something like ECMO, full life support type situations. Moving down from that, LVADs that have failed, mechanical hearts that have failed, BiVADs that have failed. Moving down from that, someone who's on IV medications, not just one, but multiple medications, and they're kind of failing, they're not doing their job. You could easily be listed as a status 3 or 4 now and be in the hospital. So question them, just how high can you get me without doing something unnecessary? Because you don't want to end up with a BiVAD or an LVAD or an ECMO when you don't have to be. But you do need their help, because I promise you, I've been there, done that. My children were older than yours are now, as in, again, they were 12 and 8, but I promise you, I was better off letting my transplant happen when they were 12 and 8 than they were 13 and 8 or 14 and 9 or what. I did math wrong, but as they grow older, it gets harder, okay? Harder on them. As a parent, I don't think it ever gets any easier, if you want to see it that way. It was hard, very hard to wait. in the hospital away from them. But my wife did the best she could. You're going to have to line up tons of family support, anyone who can keep the children, bring the children to see you, just keep life as consistent as you can. That's all you can do. Keep life as going as smoothly and normal as you can for those children, because it's going to be so out of whack for you and your spouse, but try to bring normalcy to their life. And I think I've actually got another video I can try to put at the end of this entitled something like the transplanted parent or something like that. Transplanted with children. I don't remember the title. I'll try to find it. All handy videos that I think can help with this, that will expand upon what we're saying. But at the end of the day, I know you have tons of questions, tons more questions. Ed, the rest of you who might be watching this, I'd be willing to answer them, in any way that I can. But overall, I think even though you still feel decent, even though maybe you're working a little bit, if they offer you an opportunity to be hospitalized and they're thinking they have good reason, that's the key, good reason for ramping you up this list, for getting you exemptions or whatever, I might go ahead and take it, because it's not going to be any easier in a year or 2 or 3 as it will be right now, especially when it comes to those children. The younger the age they are, the less impact I believe this will have on your entire family, and especially those children. So maybe it is time to make the personal sacrifice and to go for this, because there's such a life on the other side. I had 2 children when I was transplanted. I have 5 children right now. We've adopted 3 children. I've got a 17-year-old, a 13-year-old, a 4-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a 2-year-old. All as a result of having the gift of life. So I think it's going to be worth it for all of us. Will things go smoothly and perfectly? Probably not. Will you do normal? Have a normal life? Probably yes, or maybe better. But I think it's something, it may be time. Just watch those other videos. Have a real sit down with your team. Make them prove to you what needs to be done. I appreciate your questions. Keep asking questions. By the way, if you're someone who was transplanted with children and maybe at a time when you didn't feel so bad, please start commenting below the video. My Transplant Helper community is the best in the world. You know that. I love you guys. Comment below the video right here. Start telling your stories. Start sharing your stories with Ed, and as well as with everyone else who's eventually going to watch this video. Tell them about your life. Tell them how you made it. Admit your difficulties, but tell them how you made it through this, because in the end, that's what we're going to do. So to you, Ed, I'm certainly going to be praying for you, your entire family, that you can go through this journey in the easiest way possible. But at the same time, I'm praying for everyone, okay? I love all of my viewers, all of you. Thank you for watching this program. If you're not already a subscriber, right now is the perfect moment. Hit the subscribe button, maybe the bell notification off beside that, where I can continue to provide you with this type of content. Give this video a thumbs up if it helped you. If you just didn't like the video at all, thumbs downs are okay. I'll cry a little bit, but I'll be all right. But anyway, thanks for being a part of the community. So to you, Ed, stay stronger. To all of you, stay stronger, my friends.